Hi, I'm Linda Pineacre, psychic medium and author, and tonight's live event is Ways Loved Ones Share Messages. And I'll be sharing some heartwarming and fascinating stories about ways loved ones have shared messages. If you're popping in, could you please say hi and let me know where you're from? So loved ones continue to be there for us even after they've passed on. And if you're unable to feel your loved one's presence, it isn't because they aren't with you. It's because you aren't aware of it. You need to relax enough to sense their presence. And I know a lot of people are heartbroken and they can't figure out why their loved ones aren't coming around, but they are. You just need to relax so that you can pick up on their energy and just notice that they're there. They provide signs to reassure us that they're around. And sometimes you just don't notice that it's a sign. Something unusual might happen, but you just don't associate it with being a sign from a loved one in spirit. The great thing about them coming around to reassure us that they're present is that we know they're alive and well. And it also reassures us that our spirits live on after we pass. They're creative in their attempts to get our attention. Anything unusual that happens isn't coincidence. Paying more attention will help you to receive more messages. When something unusual happens, just pause, just long enough to sense whether or not it's a message, whether or not it's the presence of a loved one. And then if a loved one immediately comes to mind, trust that you intuitively sense their presence, and that's how you know it was them. And then pause long enough to receive the message. And there again, you need to trust right away the first thing that comes to you. It's almost always right. You just need to have trust. We'll be talking about a wide variety of ways that loved ones share messages, which I'm hoping will enable you to become more aware. A lot of times I'll have someone come for a reading, and when I connect them with their loved ones, then they start receiving signs and messages because they realize that it's actually happening and they're just much more aware of it. They often bring animals such as butterflies, dragonflies, or birds. And sometimes when this happens, you intuitively sense your loved one's spirit. So it seems as if the animal is actually the spirit of your loved one. A lot of when people think that when a hummingbird comes, it's their dad who passed on, or somebody else. But actually the animal is brought to you to get your attention so that a message can be shared with you. And sometimes it's not even words, it's an impression, like just an impression of well-being or reassurance. At times you may think of your loved one and not realize that the reason they came to your mind was because your intuition sensed their presence. So sometimes when you all of a sudden start thinking about your loved one, just check, just pause and see if they're actually there with you and trying to give you a message. Sometimes you may sense that you're not really alone, and that's because the spirit's with you. A loved one's presence can be comforting to you, even if you're not aware of it, because your intuitive self will pick up on it. And so, even though you're not consciously realizing, your soul knows that you're not alone. Spirits like to show up in photos, or they may stand behind you in the mirror. Sometimes you might see them in the reflection of a window. But that's one of the ways that they let you have a glimpse of their energy, of them. They often send the smell of their favorite perfume, or their cologne, or the smell of a cigarette, or a cigar, or a pipe, just to let you know that they're present. And I remember years ago when I was living in LA, I had moved there from San Diego, and I'd had a close friend in San Diego, and she and I used to have a lot of fun connecting with spirits when we were together. Anyway, she drove up from San Diego, and she came in the door. The first thing she did was run to the bathroom, and I could smell this really strong perfume. And I thought, why would she wear perfume? She knows that I am sensitive to it. And so she came out of the bathroom. I said, "Are you wearing perfume?" And she said, "No," I'm not wearing lotion or anything. And then I realized it was her aunt who had passed on. And she's like, she could hardly wait. Maxine's here, Linda's with her. It's time for me to connect with them and leave some messages. So we had some fun connecting with her for a while. They're able to send us signs and messages at any time after passing. It's a myth that they need recovery time before being able to connect with us. I remember one of the class I was teaching, Develop Your Intuition, a young woman came and she connected with her aunt who had only just passed on that morning. And I know when my mom passed on, she connected and gave messages to us within 15 minutes of her passing. And some people think that's kind of strange, because she was living in Calgary and my twin sister and I were here in Vancouver Island. It doesn't matter where you live, because they're energy. They can be wherever they want to be, and they can be in more than one place at once. So distance doesn't matter at all. You can move anywhere you want. You can go on vacation and spirits can still connect with you. Keep hearing a bong. It makes me think of someone's coming on, but I don't see anything. They may also send you love and reassurance at the time of passing. And one woman told me that she was with her mom and she was giving her permission to let go. And she felt this warm rush of air pass from her mother through her heart and up over her left shoulder. And she actually felt her mom's spirit leave the room. And she just said she smiled and a small tear of joy ran down her cheek. And she thought that was quite phenomenal, because she told me that she was a police officer and she believed in facts, but she just couldn't deny what she felt that day. They're often present at their memorial services or the spreading of ashes ceremonies. That's not at all unusual. Hi, Laurie. And a woman's colleague told me about, a woman's colleague had said, well, she worked with him for years, and he had told her that he would cut a rose from his garden for her. But in all the years they were together, he never did. At his funeral, there was only a few roses on the casket, but the priest grabbed a rose and walked over and handed it to this woman. And she just knew it was from him. It's amazing what they can accomplish. This other woman told me that her father absolutely hated Chicago, and he said he would never ever go through there again. But after he passed on, his casket had to be flown home, and it was supposed to be routed through Chicago. Well, it got lost in transit, so it never did go through Chicago. And she knew there was no doubt that he had arranged that. They may even save lives, provided it doesn't interfere with life lessons or contracts. And another woman told a story about how she was trying to go to work and her truck wouldn't start. And she kept getting the message that she should raise her headrest. And so she did, but the truck still didn't start. So she went in the house, but she got another message about raising the headrest. So she went out and she raised it even higher, and her truck started. She was in a very serious motor vehicle accident that day, and ended with a severe head injury. And if she hadn't raised her headrest, she would have died. So she knew that that was her loved ones saving her life for her. They like to, hi Karen, they like to leave items in unusual places in order to get our attention. And they just seem to appear out of nowhere. One woman told me about her mother. She had given her a gift for her birthday. It was her parents were musicians, and she had bought her this little set of ceramic insects, and her mom kept them on the windowsill in front of the sink. And over the years, they just constantly got bumped and broken. And by the time her mom passed on, there was only one left, and it was a little cricket with a flute. But when she and her siblings were dividing up the belongings, her siblings were very generous, and they said she could have the cricket. So she said she moved lots of times, and she always kept that cricket very safe. She took it everywhere she went, kept it for years, and she always kept it somewhere put away, safe. But any time that she needed comfort, that cricket would show out of nowhere. And she said that, for example, she was visiting a friend in the hospital who had cancer, and when she got home, there was the cricket, plain sight on the top of her bed, where she couldn't miss it. And she just knew it was her mom just being there for her at a time when she was upset. Hi, Kimberly. She says she's had a clear experience of her deceased father visiting her when she was doing breath work. Yes. And it was like she could touch him. It was so real. That's a perfect example, because, she would have been so relaxed and so at peace and so at calm that she'd be much more able to pick up on that. Thanks, Kimberly. Let me see. Let's see what else is. Oh, my stepfather loves to bring me things. I have a whole collection. But one time he put this itsy bitsy tiny little bronze Buddha in my pond. I have a very small water feature in my garden. And at that time in my life, I was really working on thinking more positively. And he brought that Buddha to commend me for my effort. And I remember I said to him, Dad, how come it's so old? He says, because you like old things. And that's true. I absolutely love old things. I love old houses. I love old furniture. I love old decorations. So it's sweet of him to do that. Another time I took my load of wash out of the wash machine, and there was 2 pairs of crystals, and they weren't the exact same size. Like there was 2 attached by a gold chain that were one size, and 2 attached by a gold chain that were a little smaller. And I knew right away they were from Dad. And I said to Dad, I said, why aren't they the same size? He said, because I wanted you to know that it wasn't an accident. They didn't just show up from somewhere. I wanted you to know that it was unusual. Would have been unusual anyway, you guys. I didn't have any crystals attached to chains. But anyway, that was sweet. One of the popular signs that they bring are coins. And they're often used to provide reassurance or to get your attention so that they can share a message. And one time I went into my cupboard that's in the corner here to get my stapler. And when I opened the cupboard, I heard a coin, and it sounded just like as if it's twirled and had fallen on the shelf of the cupboard. And I picked it up. It was a 20-pence coin, and it was from my stepdad again. And I can't remember what he was reassuring me about at the time, but that's what it was for. And I've still got it. It's right here. Another time I was watching TV with my sister, one of my sons, and a niece. And it was shortly after my mom had passed on. And when I looked over at the recliner chair where my son was sitting, I noticed a coin under the front of the recliner chair, and it hadn't been there before. It was a very shiny dime. And I said, Dad always brings us shiny dimes. But I picked it up, and as soon as I touched it, I realized it was actually from Mom, and I heard her. She sent love to each of us. And it's funny, it was a 2016 dime, but it looked brand new. Does anybody else have any ways that you've received messages from your loved ones? If you would like to share them, that'd be great. And also, if you're just signing on now, please let me know who you are and where you're from. I'd appreciate that. Thanks. When I was in trance, I was connected with a woman's father who had passed on. And he said, through trance, through me, he said, I will bring you coins, unusual coins. And when I told her later that I saw an image of a coin with a square hole in the middle, a gold coin with a square hole in the middle, she said, I already have a gold coin with a square hole in the middle. But she said, I don't have a clue where I got it. So she was tickled pink when she knew it was from him. Another time I was connected with a woman's deceased father, and I asked him what sign he could bring her. And he showed me some gold coins, but I told her, I said, they don't look like loonies. And she's, oh, that's funny. She says, last night, several gold coins showed up on my kitchen counter, and I didn't know where they came from because I was the only one home. And they were gold foil wrapped chocolate coins. So I guess that's why they didn't look like loonies. Loved ones can manipulate anything electrical, any electrical device, such as phones. And some will even let you know the exact time of their passing. One woman told me that when her grandmother passed on, oh no, I guess it was her mom, but sure, it was an antique grandmother clock. I've never heard that before. I've only heard of grandfather clocks. I don't know what the difference is. But she says an antique grandmother clock in her mother's home, and it stopped working at the exact time that her mom passed on. Well, I bet you anything, most of you have got phone calls and nobody's there, and you think, oh, they hung up the wrong number. Well, think again, because a lot of time, that's actually a loved one letting you know that they're around and trying to share a message. One time I dialed a friend's phone number, and my sister Karen answered the phone. Our stepdad had connected our phone lines because he wanted to share a message with us together while we were on the phone. He quite often talks to us when we're on the phone now, or we're in the car together, or out walking, sort of thing. And they also love to move items to get your attention. And the woman that told me the cricket story, she said that when her father passed, when he came, she could always smell his cologne. And he had a really good sense of humor, and he loved to move chairs and open drawers. And one time she came home, and she had this beautiful cabinet where all of her records were stored, her favorites, and all of her favorites were spread all over the floor when she got home. Dad wanted to let her know, I'm here. And I remember my Nana. My Nana used to keep her bathroom towels folded perfect in her bathroom. She was very fussy about it. She didn't like it if we dried our hands and they were dirty. She wanted them just right. And when she, for quite a while, when she wanted to give me a message, she'd take my hand towel off the rack and throw it on the floor. And I'd walk in the bathroom there and be like, okay, Nana, what do you want? She'd always leave a message. And a lot of times it was for myself and my twin sister too. So I'd phone Karen and say, Nana's here and this is what she said. They sometimes move or they take objects and then they just return to the same place at their convenience. But one time I was connected with a woman's father, and he told her that he moved her brush so she'd know he was there. And she said, well, the brush disappeared. And he said she couldn't have it back. And that she would have noticed the times he moved it, he wouldn't have had to take it to get her attention. She laughed because she knew he had a good sense of humor too. One of my favorite stories is when I can't remember, I think it was 5 years, yeah, I was 5 years old. My grandfather gave myself and each one of my siblings a gladiola ball. And he showed us a 50-cent piece, and he said, whoever gladiola first grew up out of the ground would win the 50-cent piece. And I won it. Well, more than 45 years later, my husband and I at the time, we moved into a home in San Diego. And there's a brick flower bed that was almost empty of soil, and it was full of roots. And we spent hours chopping out all the roots, digging out all the soil, so it was completely empty. And then we filled it with soil and some new plants, but we didn't plant any gladiolas. And months later, I came around the corner of the house, and there's this beautiful cerise gladiola, which is my favorite color. And it was literally sticking out of the brick flower bed, and it was 4 feet tall. I'd never seen a gladiola that tall. And it hung out over the side of the flower bed, so I wouldn't miss it. I would have walked into it if I hadn't noticed it. And I knew right away that my grandfather brought that. Another woman told me that after her son passed on, he repeatedly flushed his wife's toilet to get her attention because he was a plumber. And she just finally told me, you got to stop doing that. But then later on, when she went for a vacation where they had stayed on their honeymoon, darn if the toilet didn't start flushing again. She finally said, you've got to quit. I need to go to sleep. Hi, Gina. Anyway, his favorite thing to bring was ladybugs. And when the family went to their usual vacation site, and that would be like his mom and his wife, the grandchildren, all 3 generations were there. One day they were getting off of the water or whatever, and they came back to their campsite, and there's literally a swarm of ladybugs all around right where their RV was, and nobody else in the campsite had ladybugs. And it's just I guess there was hundreds of them. It was just unbelievable. And then another time, his wife was walking past a jewelry store, and their son kept banging on the shop window. And when she looked inside the window, it was full of ladybug jewelry. And she knew that her husband must have asked her son to bang on the window so she'd notice them. And another time, his mother was walking outside with a business associate, and a ladybug came along and skimmed right along her cheek I guess it was from behind, and then he hit the associate that she was walking with. He hit that guy in the back to make sure that she noticed it. They don't give up. They really will go to great lengths to get your attention. You just have to notice when something unusual happens. On the date of his birthday, his mother would always light a candle and wish him a happy birthday. And she had a little memorial place on top of a dresser. And she went to light that candle, and she kept getting messages that she should open the box that was sitting on the dresser. So she opened the box, and she'd forgotten that inside it said, I love you. And so he wanted her to open it so he could give her that message. She just forgotten about it until she read it. Gina says that one of her mom's messages was also ladybugs. Yeah, that's a good one because they're unusual. You don't see them as often. That's a really good one. I'm going to tell you a story about this guy called Chad. It's quite remarkable. When Chad's grandmother passed on, she would constantly turn the lights on for the family to let them know that she was there. And within days after Chad passed, he turned the lights dim so they could tell the difference between him and Grandma being around. Less than 6 days after his passing, his close friend Tom was printing foreclosure photos and everything because he was looking for a home. And right in the middle of him printing those foreclosure photos started coming through the printer, and they were photos of Chad. And Tom had a disc of photos from Chad. They were sitting right there on the top of his desk, but he hadn't uploaded them to his computer yet. But they just kept coming through and through and through the printer. And he turned the printer off. He tried shutting down the computer, restarted it. They just started printing again. And it didn't matter what he did. He just finally had to just let them run its course. And 15 photos printed, all 15 photos that were on the disc that was sitting on top of his desk. So he knew that was definitely Chad. And Chad's mom was, quite happy to hear that too, because she said Chad was quite a computer whiz. Apparently he'd assembled the parts for his own computer and his dad's. So she knew for sure it had to be him. Anybody have any other stories they wanted to share? Okay. The next one's a heartbreaker. It's so sweet. There is this young boy. This story was actually shared by a friend who gave it to me to put in one of my books, Messages of Hope and Healing. And it was an 11-year-old boy, and his name was Luke. And he was hemophiliac, and he contracted AIDS. And it was a time when people didn't know much about AIDS at all. And the little boy was an all-star on the school basketball team. But he wasn't able to play anymore because of the risks involved. But it was really nice because the school and the community really embraced him, even though he had AIDS. Like I said, it wasn't very well understood. And so, he was still able to continue going to school. But anyway, the Make-A-Wish Foundation gave him 3 ringside seats to a Chicago Bulls basketball game because that's what his wish was. And on his flight there with his parents, Luke kept exclaiming and looking out the window saying, "See the rainbows, see the rainbows." And his parents didn't see any rainbows. And they just thought he was hallucinating because of the medication he was on. Anyway, when they got to the game, Michael Jordan came up and introduced himself to Luke. And Luke asked him, "Will you shoot a 3-pointer for me?" And Michael Jordan says, "Yeah." He says, "When I give you the thumbs up, you'll know that one's for you." So anyway, the game didn't really go that well the first half, but the second half, things took off. And when it came time to do his 3-pointer, gave Luke the thumbs up sign. And afterwards, Luke was just jumping up and down the stand. And he said to his parents, "Did you see the rainbow? Did you see the rainbow?" Well, they didn't. All they saw was a flash of orange from the uniforms, right? But anyway, just before Luke passed, he promised his parents that he would bring them a sign that he was okay. They were so grief-stricken, they just couldn't even go to the grave for the first month. But then his mom started to feel like Luke had more that he wanted to say. So she persuaded Luke's dad to go to the funeral site or the grave site with her. And when they were at the grave, this beautiful rainbow came out, and it hadn't even rained for several days. And the two of them just hugged each other and cried because they knew that was a sign from Luke. And after that, they'd constantly see rainbows. And if they'd ask their friends said, "No, we don't see rainbows." They finally quit telling people because they knew nobody else could see them, that Luke was just bringing them for them. Anyway, when I typed that story into my book, I had headphones on. I was listening to music, and I was, writing away. And I heard swish, swish, swish. And I thought, what? Somebody's in my house? So I took the headphones off and I started to make my way up the hallway. I got about halfway up the hallway and then I knew what it was. And I said, "Luke, is that you?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you have a message for me?" And he said, "Thanks for sharing my story." Brought me to tears. So I wrote to the guy who gave me the story. He's also an author in Boston. And he got chills. And he told me that he would contact Luke's parents and let them know. Anybody else have any messages you want to share that you've got from loved ones in spirit? Guess what? It's another quick night. That's the end of my stories. Oh, wait a minute. Just hit me. I got to scroll down these comments to see if anybody's here. Oh, Gina said, "I couldn't figure out why I had ladybugs everywhere. Then I moved to another apartment and more ladybugs on the windowsills, etc. Finally, I realized that it was my mom. When I remembered how she had made my daughter a sweater when she was a baby, I chose the pattern. It had 17 ladybugs around the shoulders. After I realized that, it stopped. Oh, that is so sweet. Ellen, hi, Lynn. And Lynn says, the first Christmas after my husband died, I asked for a sign that he was with us. Someone put the Christmas crackers around the dining room table. I was not sitting in my usual spot, as I just couldn't do that. We opened our crackers and pulled out the little saying that is included, and mine said, knock, knock, who's there? Wayne. My husband's name was Wayne. I kept that as, who would believe that? Oh my God, it makes me want to cry. That is so sweet. Well, hi, Karen. Thanks for joining. Wow. Well, I've had, like I said, I've had several people tell me that after receiving messages from a loved one's spirit during a reading, that they began to know the signs themselves. I guess it's just all about bringing it to your attention and realizing it really is possible. So if you haven't already noticed, pay close attention, and you may discover that your loved ones are also sending you indications of their presence in your life. And it can be all kinds of things, feathers, coins, well, many of the things I mentioned. I mean, you can see that it's really a wide range. Anything's possible. So if something, really unusual happens, give it a second thought, see if it's a message. And you can ask who sent it. Oh, someone just sent me a heart. Thank you. So, yeah, like if you notice like a gift of nature, just quiet and think, who sent me this message? And see if you get an answer. And just trust the first impression that you receive. And if you don't receive a message right away, just ask whether there is a message. And then just trust whatever impression or message that comes to you. It's really that simple. It's only if you try really, really hard, it's almost like it builds a brick wall. It makes it impossible to get it. You sort of have to relax enough for the message to come to you instead of you straining to try to get it. I certainly hope that all of you will be getting lots of messages from your loved ones, and that what we've talked about tonight will help to make that more possible for you. The next event is going to be messages of identification from loved ones. And it's another live event on March 13th. Wednesday, 6 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And if you want to ask any questions for that, or you want to offer ideas for future live events, please put them in the comments. I'd appreciate that. It's a free event on my business page on Facebook at Linda Pineacre Spirit Communications. Thanks for joining, everybody.